Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies, Episode 1. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for all the kind words over our past several episodes when we finished up our mini-series with the Los Angeles Angels. Put out a tutorial video about the settings that we would be using for this playthrough. And then most recently, the very brief channel update that we put out where we talked about the decision that we just made and the fact that we were going to play the Rockies this year. Sincerely appreciate everyone who watches these episodes and appreciate the support in the comment section to these episodes and the enthusiasm that many of you have for this journey that we are going to begin undertaking today. And a couple of housekeeping notes as I get started. Even though I did, before the settings tutorial video, write down everything I wanted to talk about, I did realize that I missed a couple of things. So I actually have made one change that I missed to the game settings, and then one additional change to the game settings that I talked about. The setting that I missed is in the league settings and the rules. And this is something that I have talked about in the comment section with frequent viewer and frequent commenter on the channel, Patrick DeBonis, and I forgot to actually make this move in the tutorial video, and obviously since I forgot to make the move, I forgot to talk about it. But we are also going to click off of enabling the amateur draft combine. I just haven't found that feature of the game to be all that rich. So we're going to get away with it here in our long-term series in OOTP 26. The second change that I made came from some back and forth today with Knight Gallant, a first-time commenter and a new member of the Worldwide Scouting Department. And remember, all you need to do to become a member of the Worldwide Scouting Department is to comment on our episodes and share your thoughts on the videos that you are watching. We're always looking for more talent to join our team. But talked in the tutorial episode about ways to potentially make the game a little more challenging to me. And Knight Gallant had an idea that I liked about the development lab and potentially giving the team that I'm running fewer slots than the others. I don't think there's a way to actually do that in the settings, so I'm going to just do it manually. So what I've done is I've upped the development lab size to 10, but my team is only going to use 8 of those slots. So the 29 AI teams will all have 2 extra development slots this year and every year going forward compared to what we're going to have here in Colorado. Other than that, though, all of these changes and all of these settings are exactly the same as I talked about in the tutorial video, but just wanted to make sure that was being clear about exactly how we're going to end up playing the game here in OOTP 26. And one slightly positive thing, and this likely has to do with the fact that when we did the tutorial video, we were playing as the San Francisco Giants with their scout and different fog of war than starting off this episode with our scout from the Colorado Rockies. But supposedly our minor league system is actually middle of the pack in this world, which is up from, I believe it was 24th when we did the tutorial. Still not great, but we actually have 2 top 100 prospects instead of 1. Charlie Condon was the 1 top 100 prospect we thought we were going to have, and it turns out that Chase Dollander, 23-year-old with the Albuquerque Isotopes, is pretty highly regarded in this world, although looking at his ratings, seems like best case scenario is he's kind of a average-ish major league arm. And with the fact that looks like he's going to give up a fair amount of home runs and he's got extreme fly ball tendencies, not sure ultimately how successful we're going to be with him here with Colorado, but any little bit of extra talent that might be in our organization, certainly not something that I'm going to turn my nose up at. So felt slightly positive about that, but slightly negative about something else. I mentioned that there was about $17 million that I thought I was going to have in total money available to make some significant changes to the coaching staff. Unfortunately, when I was glancing at the Rockies while playing the game as the Giants, didn't notice how low our scouting, player development, and most importantly our draft budget, since we have the number 4 pick in this upcoming draft, were in terms of the default. So when I actually put scouting and player development just at a baseline level and put in just about enough money to sign our draftees, all of a sudden we've only got $1.7 million to spend. So it may be somewhat more tricky and time-consuming for me to turn over the coaches that I would like to in this episode. But I think we'll get there eventually. It just may not happen all here at the beginning of this series. One other housekeeping note that I meant to mention and was not a critical factor in my decision to play with the Rockies rather than the White Sox, I think for all of the reasons I outlined in the tutorial episode. The Rockies are a bit more challenging than the White Sox when all is said and done, but either is going to be quite a challenge. But although the Colorado Rockies have been in Major League Baseball for over 30 years, since 1993, they have never, ever had a first-place finish. So in addition to hopefully turning this team around, perhaps we can deliver them at some point their first division title ever, although I'm guessing it's going to be several years away. Hopefully we'll still be employed in several years because ownership actually has pretty high expectations for us. This team is 7-36 as we sit here late afternoon on Friday, March 16th, 2025. And Charlie Monfort expects us to play close to 500 ball this year. So even though I am pretty confident we'll be able to improve on the 163 winning percentage that the Rockies have put up this year, given that they haven't been close to 500 ball since 2018, and we do have a awful roster and very limited financial levers to press right now, I think there's absolutely no way we're going to get anywhere close to 500 this year. Honestly, my goal is to just get through this season without too much pain, without doing such a horrible job that I get fired after 1 year, and then hopefully begin the off season and start building this team back up. It'll also be interesting to see whether I get charged with that 7-36 start to the season in my personal manager history. It's got me at 0-0 right now, but I don't know whether I'll have that 163 winning percentage blemish on my record and get credit for everything the Rockies did this year, or we'll only know what I did after we took over here as GM on May 16th. One thing that was a little disappointing, just a minor thing that I noted, obviously since it is May 16th, I did the live start, and they have not yet addressed the fact that Bud Black was fired several days ago. He's still listed as the Rockies manager, so not sure whether or not we'll be able to keep him around. Clearly a big determinant of whether we're going to be able to keep him around is whether we're going to be able to open up a little bit of salary by trading away some of these veteran players that aren't particularly effective. Got some good feedback to the last episode from Fred Red, who has played with the Rockies, and he has traded away several of these more expensive players. As we noted in the last episode, we're playing with trade difficulty as high as we can make it, so I'm not particularly optimistic that we're going to be getting much, if anything, in a return for their players, and that we're not going to have to retain good chunks of these contracts. But German Marquez is 30 years old, and he's pitched his way to an 8.27 earned run average this year, making $10 million. I don't see any scenario in which we would want to bring him back next year, particularly given that he's looking for a raise. So we'll start things off by shopping him around just to see if there are any options whatsoever for someone to take Marquez off of our hands. And not surprisingly, given the trade settings that we're playing on, nobody wants to touch him if we don't retain a big chunk of his contract. Just to get the conversation started, if we only tried to free up $2 million with Mr. Marquez, is there anything we can do? And there are some options there. So hopefully there'll be an option for us to get that contract off the books and hopefully retain much less than 80% of it. Can't say that I'm going to care all that much about who I get in return, although Adam Blowbaum actually appears like a guy who could be a useful left-handed arm out of the bullpen. 24 years old. Got a lot of growth ahead of him, potentially with his stuff. Have seen in these first couple months of OOTP 26 that there's a fair amount of pitchers who get into their mid to late 20s who still have a lot of allegedly untapped potential that doesn't always end up getting tapped. Given that he's only 24, I think there's a bit better chance. So I'll spend a little time offline trying to investigate all of the options here. Marquis Grissom Jr. Did not know that he was in the Washington Nationals organization. I honestly did not know that Marquis Grissom Jr. was around. He's a pitcher, unlike his father, but another guy who's got a pretty acceptable potential, but with the fact that it looks like he's going to allow a lot of home runs and has extreme fly ball tendencies, probably not the exact type of pitcher that we're going to be looking for here in Colorado. I think the prototype of what I'm going to look for is ultimately going to be someone who, and we can look at the free agents that are out there right now. Don't know that there's necessarily any real impact players, but Austin Meadows in this OOTP 26 universe is actually a useful-ish looking major league player, even though I think his career is in some degree of jeopardy in real life. He may not be a bad guy for us to bring in the organization. But back to the pitchers, which is what I was originally talking about, and the profile of players that I think I'm going to be looking for in a perfect world. The type of pitchers that I think I'm going to want to build this pitching staff around are guys with ground ball tendencies, ground ball or pitcher types, and then after that first type of screen, hopefully pitchers who have decent movement on their pitches to keep the ball in the ballpark. So Andy Otero here fits the bill with extreme ground ball tendencies, ground ball or pitcher type, above average movement, and particularly above average home run allowed ratings. The issue is that his stuff is not necessarily major league quality, but he is durable and might be a guy to consider bringing on board as a lefty reliever swing starter. We don't have a ton of talent on this team and could probably use some help throughout our organization, so I will be digging into the free agent market as well, hopefully after I have freed up some financial resources by again exploring that potential trade that I had been talking about with German Marquez. Before I go offline to do that, I think this is the final piece of housekeeping information that I want to give you about changes that I have made. And the Rockies were a team that had 2 DSL teams. I just don't like managing 2 DSL teams, so I actually moved all of the players from the second DSL team to this first roster, so we probably have a high degree of redundancy there, and we'll likely need to be cutting some players. But I did go into the Dominican Rookie League. I deleted our second DSL team, rejiggered some things with the divisions in that league, and then regenerated a schedule there. So the league will operate properly when it starts up in a month or two, but I'm only going to have to manage 1 DSL team going forward. And we are able to get a deal for Adam Blowbaum done. If we ship off German Marquez, and we're able to get the deal done without having to retain any of his money. If we give up a couple of guys, Nick Martini is a first baseman who looks like he was just recently sent down to AAA Albuquerque. 34-year-old is a useful-ish major league left-handed hitter, but not at 34, almost 35 years old, with limited defensive ability, a big part of our future. Mentioned that we're going to be focusing on trying to bring in ground ballers who keep the ball in the park as we build our pitching staff. And I think a big part of making that work is to have pretty good defense, hopefully, in a few years in the infield as well. Not that first base is a critically important infield position, but still would hope we could have somebody stronger than a guy who's 5'11" with below average defensive ratings at first base, who's in his mid-30s. So we're happy to give up our Martini. They also wanted Austin Becker, who the stuff and the movement are fine-ish, but horrible control. He was in the ACL with us at 25 years old. We're going to be going through before we move too far on in this game and going through and doing a deep dive through our minor league system and likely reassigning people to a bunch of different levels from the defaults. But Austin Becker, not a big part of our future. So Marquez, the Nationals were willing to retain 30% of his contract straight up for Blowbaum, and then adding in Martini and Becker got us to the point where we can actually improve our available money by almost $8 million, which will let me get into a position where now we can actually start investigating one of the other things that I talked about in the tutorial episode, which was starting to rebuild our personnel in our staff, because it's definitely not a particularly good situation here. And when we're thinking about the coaches, Undercover Boomer had asked me to maybe give an example or two of some of the moves that we'll be making. And we're going to be making a lot more moves than this to the extent we can afford them. An obvious one is our pitching coach in AAA, Chris Michalek, who, although he's average at teaching pitching, is poor with development and poor with mechanics. And generally want my pitching coaches, particularly in the minors, to be really good with development and mechanics and to also be better than average at teaching pitching. One negative thing about moving on from Michalek is that his focus is actually ground ballers, and we intend to be bringing some of them into the organization over the coming years. But I think there's going to be much better opportunities than him out there. So we are going to go ahead and fire Chris Michalek. So that's going to cost us a little bit of money. I wish I had looked at exactly what it was, but I know it. I mean, if I could do some simple math, I think he was making $115,000, and he was signed through next year. So I'm guessing that this number is about $230,000 less than it used to be. And we'll go back now and we'll take a look at the personnel that is potentially available. And you can see there are a lot of pitching coaches out there with some pretty significant abilities. I'm going to spend a little time perusing this list and see if I can come up with someone interesting to make an offer for in AAA. Don't want to go completely crazy because we might end up actually firing our major league pitching coach as well, and I should figure that out. Brian Conger is a guy that I oftentimes end up with in my organization in the early stages of a playthrough. Excellent at teaching pitching, good with development, good with mechanics. So he's got that general profile that we'd like to have in a coach. Focus on power pitchers. Probably not perfect since we're hoping to bring a bunch of ground ballers into the organization, but it's also going to take us a lot of time to bring those ground ballers into the organization, particularly through the draft and international amateur free agency. And doesn't mean that we won't consider bringing power pitchers into the organizations. Conger is also a guy that we expect to have good relationships with the AAA team and also good relationships with the major league team. So I guess I probably want to make a decision on our major league pitching coach, Darryl Scott, before moving too far forward. The issue with Darryl Scott, he's making $415,000 a year, and he's signed for 3 seasons, including this one. So we're going to be out about 1.2 some odd million if we do fire him. Only average at teaching pitching, okay with development, okay with mechanics. Might be a guy that we just end up sucking it up and dealing with, at least for this season, because we don't have a ton of high potential pitchers in our organization, particularly those who are going to be at the major league level. Clearly, when we looked at our player development, Chase Dollander is a guy who could be in the majors very soon. But as I talked about, given that profile where we think he's going to allow some home runs, he's got extreme fly ball tendencies, and we think he's a very highly regarded prospect. He might be somebody that we actually end up just trying to trade away for a prospect who fits the profile that we're looking for better. Now, the issue is with the trade setting that we're on, we're going to get, if we're lucky, 60 or 70 cents on the dollar for Dollander. So there's obviously a lot for us to think about in these early stages of the game. So I am likely to go offline for a decent chunk of time now, and what I'm likely to be doing are 3 primary things before I hop back into this episode and you hear from me again. One will be continuing to see whether or not there's any practical path whatsoever to clear some of these other contracts. Chris Bryant, at least, is a competentious looking major league player at this point with the bat. Now, the 83 WRC plus he put up last year and the 88 WRC plus he put up a year before don't necessarily indicate that. And for $27 million, we'd certainly want much more than just a competent player. But if we have to hold on to a huge chunk of his salary, it might just make sense to suck it up and keep him on the roster for the next season or two. Bryant is still an extremely popular player, so we're not in a very good position with the fans right now with that 39 fan interest. And even though he's overpaid and not particularly productive, provoking the fans by potentially moving on from him is not necessarily what we want to do. I wouldn't hate moving on from Kyle Freeland, who we owe 16, 16, and $17 million these next 3 seasons. Flyball pitcher, gives up some home runs. Pitched his way to a 6.15 ERA this year. He's the last guy that I'll shop here before I start working offline. And I am cognizant of the fact that when I was talking about the salary situation here and shopping players, that there were 2 other things I was going to tell you about. So before I do those, I will shop Freeland here just to see what the options are. Based on what we saw with Marquez, my hunch is we're going to have to keep a good chunk of his contract just to get anyone remotely interested. I don't want to be holding on to 75% of this contract, but again, I just don't know what the true opportunity set is really going to look like to get that contract off the books. And yeah, even with us retaining 75% of the contract, there's not a single player and not a single team is interested in bringing Freeland on board. So it is going to be tricky, I think, to do much in the way of trading to open up some more money for us to play with. But it is something that I'm going to do offline. The second thing that I'm going to do offline is peruse the free agent market and start bringing on some guys to, honestly, in some cases, I think possibly help us at the major league level, but at the very least give us a little more depth in the organization. And then the third thing that I am going to be focusing on offline before I check back in is doing a deep dive on our coaches, our scout, and our trainer, and trying to triage the situation there and open up, actually spend some money that we have, but hopefully open up a few more spots where we can potentially upgrade some of the coaches in our organization. And as I talked about with the financial limitations, I don't think we're going to make a ton of progress this season, but every little move that we make will hopefully be a small step in the right direction on this path to hopefully respectability and hopefully an opportunity to keep our job long enough to get this team on a better path. I did mention in a response to a comment to the last episode that we put out where we picked the Colorado Rockies as our team that I think if I can get to a 3rd contract with this team, I will have us in a position where I'll then feel like I can probably hold on to my job. But given that we are 7-36 and the owner wants us to play 500 ball, and I am a absolute novice with no reputation to speak of, there is some non-zero probability that I end up being fired before I can turn this thing around. And right now, my big move that I've made has been trading away the number 1 starter from a team that's only won 7 of its first 43 games. And I've spent some time offline trying to work on the 3 things I mentioned before briefly signing off, and we don't have a lot of levers to press here. I also shopped Antonio Senzatella and Austin Gomber, trying to retain 80% of each of those contracts, and there was no one even interested in bringing them on board with me keeping 80% of what they were looking for. So it's looking like it's going to be difficult for us to get a significant amount of these contracts off the books, at least right now. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep trying, but we've shopped everyone we can shop today, so probably we'll move forward a little bit between now and the next episode and continue just trying to work the phone lines and try to convince somebody to take a flyer on some of these very ineffective and expensive players in our Colorado Rockies organization, which is not going to be easy to get anyone to do. I have made a number of minor league offers to players to kind of bolster our organization. And I think in some cases, if and when these players sign in the next few days, they are likely to be competing for spots on our major league roster, and at the very least competing for a spot on our 40-man roster, because we only have 22 players on the active roster right now and only 25 on the 40-man roster. So some familiar veteran names that we've made offers to: Nick Gordon, Kyle Lewis among them. We had to offer a signing bonus to Austin Meadows, but given his profile, I think it makes sense to potentially bring him on board. Mark Payton, another veteran we're trying to bring into the organization. Pitching-wise, the 24-year-old Josan Mendez, I don't think the guy's going to be a superstar, but he looks like he could be a potentially useful right-handed arm. Again, he's a guy who's in his mid-20s, and he's close to 25 years old, who allegedly has some untapped potential, so we'll see how well that works. But given the difficult situation we have with our pitching staff right now, we're willing to bring on just about anybody who we think might help. So hopefully we'll start getting some of those guys signed to minor league contracts over the next few days. And then ultimately it's not going to shock me if some of them end up on major league minimum contracts when we move them to the major league roster, which will deteriorate the money that we have available for free agents a bit further. That being said, we are going to continue to make a couple of personnel moves, and in response to the question from Undercover Boomer, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about a couple of the guys that we're going to be moving on from. We are going to move on from the pitching coach, Daryl Scott. Average at teaching pitching, only okay with development and mechanics. So as we talked about, he's kind of passable for this year. But I really do like Brian Conger as a guy that we can hopefully build the pitching staff around, or the coaching staff around, pitching coaching specifically in the coming years. And that's assuming that Brian Conger's personality will work well with the other coaches that we have. Because in addition to Scott being kind of a meh pitching coach, he's also a guy who has a fair amount of conflicts with several of the other coaches on the staff. So hopefully it will be a bit of addition by subtraction, moving on from him and hopefully replacing him with someone who's not just a better coach, but also someone who gets along better with the rest of the coaches on our major league team. We are going to keep Bud Black since he wasn't fired in this game. For coach, for manager, the things we care most about are how do they do with development, how do they do with mechanics, how do they do with aging, and he's very good to excellent in those three areas. And he's also a guy who has good relationships with the Rockies, so I feel like he was a bit of a sacrificial lamb anyways, looking at this roster. Yeah, 7-36 is historically bad, but what exactly did ownership and the general manager think he was going to do with this team? And I also think it was kind of weaselly that I believe it was the general manager who gave Black a vote of confidence that he's not going to get fired after they lost 21-0 last Saturday. They went out and won on Sunday, and then he fired him after they won the game, which I thought was just not really the right way to handle it. If you're going to fire the guy, just fire him. Don't say, no, he's our manager, and then you go out and win a game, and then you fire him the next day. So I'm kind of glad that the folks at OOTP haven't gotten the live start completely up to date, and that we will have Bud Black on the team, and Bill Schmidt is going to be our assistant GM until hopefully we move on from him down the line. But personnel-wise, we are going to go ahead and fire Daryl Scott, and you can see that will have a material impact on our money available, dropping it down another notch. The other guy that we're going to fire is our first base coach, Ronnie Gideon. The base coaches, the important things are how they do in terms of in-game running, and then how they do in terms of teaching, catching, infield and outfield defense and running. And you can see he's fair, okay, or average in all of those things. So he's not particularly effective at any of the key things we need him to do. He's also not making a ton of money and not signed for a ton of years, so he will be a relatively inexpensive guy to buy out. And then looking at the staff roles, Gideon actually doesn't have any problems with people, but still just think that we can upgrade some things pretty easily by moving on from Ronnie Gideon, and it's not going to be all that expensive to do that. So we are going to go ahead and fire Mr. Gideon as well. And before we finish up this episode, because I've realized that I'm going to need a lot more time offline to do the things that I'd like to do to hopefully start moving this franchise in the right direction. So the last thing I'm going to do is just let you know what we're going to do as far as our trainer and scouting director. The trainer, Keith Duggar, is certainly not great, but we don't have any particularly valuable resources right now at the major league level. We're not competing for anything in particular this year, except hopefully avoiding being one of the historically worst teams in baseball history. So if we have an extra injury or two, not the end of the world. Certainly could look to move on from Duggar at the end of this season, but I don't think there's a huge need to do it right now. The scouting director situation is a little less clear to me. Danny Montgomery, average with major leaguers, average with the minor leaguers, average with international scouting, although he is excellent with scouting amateurs. He is a favor tools scout, and I mentioned this in the tutorial video that there was a good post from several days ago that Matt Arnold, one of the OOTP developers, put out on the OOTP forums about the difference between favor tools and favorability scouts and how that is different in 2026. Would suggest if you haven't checked that out and you want to know more about scouting that you do give that a read. I still think even after what Matt said, I'm going to be inclined to have a favor tools or highly favor tools scout. And I think that I can certainly upgrade from Danny Montgomery. But given that if we buy him out right now, it's going to cost us about $2.7 million, I think I'm inclined to just let him be our scout through this season. He is excellent with scouting amateurs, and as I noted, we are, if I could click properly, going to have the 4th pick overall in this upcoming amateur draft that's less than 2 months from now. So I think he's a good resource to get us through the amateur draft. If he's average at everything else, at least we'll start building up our knowledge across the organization. But we can save close to $1 million by keeping him on board for the time being. So I think I'm inclined to not make a move with Montgomery yet. Keep him on throughout this year. And then perhaps when we get to the end of the season and it's only going to be $1.8 million to buy him out, and we've got a bit more, hopefully, financial flexibility and freedom than we have right now, that may be the time to buy him out and hopefully upgrade the position to someone who's a bit younger, a bit better. If he wasn't excellent with scouting amateurs, I think I'd be more inclined to let him go right now. But honestly, that's going to be the main thing that we need to focus on. Ultimately, would like someone who's good or excellent or outstanding with international scouting. But because our first IAFA signing period isn't going to happen until January, and that pool of players isn't going to be released until mid-October, I don't think we're hurting ourselves too much by waiting to bring on a better scout as far as those international prospects until after we get through this season. So hopefully I've laid out the initial game plan here a little bit. As I noted, it's Friday, May 16th, both in the game and in the real world right now. When I do come back for the next episode, very well maybe later on today on Friday, May 16th in the real world, but we'll probably have moved forward a few days. Want to start making some offers to the personnel that we're looking to replace, and also want to start finding out what happens with some of these players that we've made free agent offers to. And I'm also going to be spending a lot of time going through all of these minor league teams, likely cutting players who have bad personalities, likely shifting the levels that some of these guys are actually playing at, and ultimately probably even having a major league roster that looks different than the one we have today. And while I'm doing all of that, I'm going to continue trying desperately to perhaps find a way to get some of these more expensive contracts off the books. But I do feel like if I've got to keep 80% of these contracts, there's not a ton of urgency in doing something right now. If I put myself in a position where Chris Bryant, and Bryant, because of the settings that we're playing with, is a guy that I can't actually trade for another 4 weeks until he's recovered. So not even going to hazard a guess as to how much we might have to retain to keep him on board. But if it's 80% that we have to keep him on board, do I really still want to be paying over $20 million for Chris Bryant to be on another team in 2027, 2028? Probably not. So if anything, I think that the situation here with the Rockies might even be a little worse than I anticipated. But hopefully we'll have made a little bit of progress by the next time we check in. This chart here of the Rockies in the division compared to everybody else is one of the most troubling charts I've ever seen for a team in all my years of playing OOTP in terms of the division graph. But we will see if we can make that chart look better. We'll see if we can make this roster look better over time. It's going to be an interesting experiment, but we'll see how it goes. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.